architects and urban designers has undoubtedly gained more impetus. I'm Sneha Arora, your host for the session. As has been the norm, I'd request everyone to turn the phones on silent mode. If you plan to leave the hall during the session, please be mindful not to distract the speakers. Questions from the audience will be taken up at the end of the panel discussion if time permits. The technical session will be followed by an exclusive expert speak session with Mr. Sebastian Zacharias. At the outset, I request Mr. Faizer Ali Dastagir, National Head Projects Viva Composite Panel, to declare the session open. Please welcome Mr. Faizer.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here amongst all of you in the Rajasthan Architectural Festival. I am Faizer. I represent Viva Composite Panel. I'm National Head Projects. Just a brief presentation about what we do at Viva. It's actually a 20-minute presentation, but I'll try to squeeze in with 5 to 7 minutes. It's ACP, a cladding solution for modern building facades. No, it's not moving. About Viva, we are a company which is into ACP for the last 2 decades. Basically, we started as an importer of ACP. Today, we are India's largest manufacturer of ACP. We make all kinds of aluminum composite panels. It's completely a Make in India company. We have a 7 million square meter per annum production capacity. So currently, that has been scaled up to around 35,000 square meter per day. We make 10 years to 30-year warranty product for exterior applications. The biggest strength of Viva is we have 500 customer service points throughout India, which is dealer distribution networks, as well as our own company warehouses. So it makes it easy for all of you to access our products and services. We make a fire retardant grade, 3 classes, Class B, A2, and A2+. If you visit our stalls, my team would be very happy to explain in detail what those are. We have 7 state-of-art production lines, which is our biggest asset. We have 2 coating lines and we have 5 lamination lines. So all the products that come into the market come completely manufactured in our plant. This is a brief history of ACP. ACP basically evolved in the year 1969, and in the 1980s it started becoming an architectural product. In 1990s it's when it picked up as a product which was vividly used. It's gone through its own evolution. Basically it started at solid metallic colors. And today we see we've come a long way. If you come to our stall, we can see natural stone finishes, cotton steel inspired finishes, metallum finishes. So ACP has traveled a long way in its journey of evolution. That's resulted in the emergence of new shades and textures, basically to keep the product very interesting. Otherwise, overuse of any material makes it obsolete. So we always have this endeavor that we keep bringing out new shades and textures, understanding it from you, from the architect fraternity, what would you like to see on your facade as a material in ACP. So that's the endeavor we are all constantly doing. So this is a few of our series. This is our natural stone series. This is our metal abstract series, cotton steel inspired. This is our new metallum series, again, new textures and shades, never been seen in ACP before. This is a part which I would skip right now, just touch upon it in a very small way, basically, so that when you come to a stall, you can look it into detail. ACP had its own challenges in terms of fire being a threat to ACP because it was contributing to fire. So as manufacturers worldwide, we had to take this step to make ACP more safer. And which has now become a foolproof thing. We've got ACP that is safe, that is fire retardant, basically by adding the hydroxide, the mineral core into the core of the ACP. So that makes it fire retardant. So we have different classes of ACP. One is called the Class B, which is a 70% mineral co-product. We have A2, that is a 90% mineral co-product. These are experiments that were conducted in the lab. I'm not able to show you due to time constraint. There's a very important thing I would like to highlight before I go further is that there is a difference between testing a product and certifying a product. Our products are certified. That means the factory is under audit from a third-party agency. The audit continues till the validity of the certification. So the agencies are basically third-party international agencies that validate the standard. So this is very important when you come to a product. So testing basically means I make a good sample and send it and get it tested, but certification is random. So this ensures that I just don't claim that I am a fire retardant manufacturer, ACP manufacturer, but I'm validated by an international standard. The standards are mentioned there, NFPA 285, EN 13501. So I request you all to please visit our stall and my team would be happy to give you more details on it. So these are a few of our certifications. I would now like to just skip very quickly to where it is all made. This is our plant in Gujarat, 2.5 hours from Mumbai. It's a state-of-the-art plant where we have a very important part is this paint mixing unit. So all the shades that you see in our range is basically formulated in-house. So we have representatives from paint manufacturers who work tandemly with us to bring out these new shades and textures. We have 2 color coating lines. This is very important. We coat all our coils up to 5 feet and above we can coat in India. We have 5 lamination lines that make different FR class products. So we've been a part of a lot of national projects of significance and also international projects we supply to Middle Eastern countries, countries in Africa. So I would request all of you to drop into our stall and then have a word with us and get to know further more details about it. So we basically aim at not just being a manufacturer, but also a partner with you who can give you solutions, just not sell the product. That's the main aim of our company, that we be a part of your project and be a partner to your project rather than just being a manufacturer and selling the product. Thanks for the opportunity. Looking forward to see you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Viva, for sparing the time and energy to invest in our event. So far, the festival with its theme Metamorphosis in Architecture has seen discussions on heritage, readaptive architecture, coalescing modern into traditional, architectural transformations, and architecture of democracy, which leads us to our concluding session on cities, protests, and social change. Today's session will be centered on the relationship of built with the society, the ability of the built to influence the change in society, and vice versa. So let's see what our eminent speakers have to share on the topic. We are fortunate to have with us once again Dr. Sanjeev Vidyarthi as the moderator of the session. For the benefit of those who are listening to him for the first time, I'll quickly introduce him. Professor Vidyarthi is a senior fellow of the Great Cities Institute and the founding director of Masters in City Design program at the University of Illinois, Chicago. He specializes in urban planning and policy and has authored 5 books and many papers published around the world. Our first speaker would be architect Chen Yushin. He is the principal architect and founder of CGS Architecture and Association and city architect of Cheongju City, Korea. He had been teaching as an adjunct professor at Yonsei University till 2015 for more than 20 years. He was also the city architect of Sejong Administrative City and was a member of Architectural Policy Committee in Seoul Metropolitan Government, an architectural advisor of Korea International Cooperative Agency, and master planner of National Museum Complex of Sejong Administrative City. He has received several awards. To mention a few, he received Presidential Award of Korea Architecture Award 2008, Acacia Gold Medal, Seoul Architecture Award, and Korean Architecture Award. He also worked with several professors to translate a couple of books in architecture into Korean, such as Architect's Handbook of Professional Practice and Architectural Voices. Our second speaker would be Naresh V. Narasimhan, sir. He is a practitioner and leader with over 34 years of experience in architecture and urban design. He is best known for his association with Venkataramanan Associates, an award-winning architecture firm based out of Bangalore, which saw a meteoric rise under his leadership. In addition to his architectural practice, his contribution to urban development as an urbanist and creative entrepreneur has been far-reaching. As co-founder of Bangalore Agenda Task Force, co-founder of MOD Foundation, an international collective of urban designers and researchers and curators, and chairman of Link Innovations, an innovation and learning hub rooted in the Indo-French startup ecosystem, Mr. Naresh has fueled a variety of progressive causes in the city. He also regularly advises government agencies on infrastructure development. He studied architecture at Manipal Institute of Technology, followed by continuing education at Harvard Institute for International Development. His interests range from politics, governance, and communication strategies to cinema, art, and popular culture. Next, we'll have architect Rahul Kadri. He's a partner and principal architect at IMK Architects, an architecture and urban design practice founded in 1957 with offices in Mumbai and Bangalore. He spent his formative years amidst lush landscapes exploring the forests of Kumaon Himalayas while studying at Sherwood College, Nainital. This early relationship with nature infused within him a deep passion to create buildings and spaces in harmony with its natural context. In 1990s, with Kadri at its helm, IMK Architects transformed to focus its practice on social consciousness and urban ecological sensitivity. Kadri's work is widely acclaimed with multiple felicitations from the Indian Institute of Architects, an Architect of the Year award from the Times Network, and was listed among India's top architects at the Construction World and Builder Awards 2021. Most recently, IMK Architects was honored as the supreme winner, as well as the winner of the Public Building Exterior category at the 2021 Surface Design Awards, London. IMK Architects was also honored as the Best Architecture and Urban Design Practice, Western India, at the Health and Pharmaceutical Awards, UK. Additionally, the firm won the HUDCO Design Award 2021 in the New and Innovative Town Design Solutions Eco-Cities category for JSW Hillside, a township in Bellary. Our last speaker for the day would be architect Sheila Prakash, an internationally acclaimed architect, urban designer, and sustainability expert. She founded Shilpa Architect Planners Designers in 1979. In July 2011, the World Economic Forum invited her to be part of the Global Agenda Council for Design and Innovation, where she formulated the Reciprocal Design Index to establish, document, and incentivize sustainable design of cities. She is widely consulted on matters of urban sustainability by several governments and is closely associated with the Chennai Smart City as an independent director and urban expert. She has been recently awarded the Ben Merenti Medal of the University of Architecture and Urbanism, Bucharest, and the Ministry of National Education and Scientific Research, Romania. Please give a big round of applause to all our speakers. As we're aware that time is of critical essence, so I'd request all the participants to please observe a time limit, and please don't mind if I ring the bell. Thank you, sir. Requesting Sanjeev, sir, to please take over the proceedings.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking out your time on a Sunday afternoon on such a hot day to show up here what I imagine to be a very interesting discussion. You already heard the lineup of eminent speakers that Indian Institute of Architects Rajasthan chapter has lined up. That surprised me. It's an incredible gathering of people who usually would not be found in one space unless very carefully approached and invited well in time. So I want to start by acknowledging the organization of this event and the carefully curated almost lineup of people as we have seen over the 2 days. So our agenda for the next few minutes is I want to lay out the organization of the panel so that we know what's going on. And the second thing I want to do is to sort of provide a little backdrop so that all of us are on the same page when it comes to thinking about cities and the ideas of protest and social change. The way the panel would work is, once I have stopped speaking, which should happen soon, we would invite each of the panelists in alphabetical order to come and state their position clearly. So right up front, each of the panelists would say what they think about this. Maybe some of them would say that protest is not a good idea in urban areas because it disrupts human life, and protest should only be happening in open countryside, right? So people would say what they think. Some of them might say that cities are central to protest, and that's where protests have traditionally happened. And unless they happen in cities, the governments do not really pay attention. So, right, but every one of the panelists would state their position clearly and upfront within a few minutes and might show a few slides or ideas in support of their argument and positions. So about 5 to 6 to 7 minutes, and I trust Sneha to start, sort of sounding the bell. She has one at her disposal. So 5, 6, 7 minutes, and then we would set up a discussion and sort of follow up with a few questions. That's the part I would moderate, and then towards the end of it, we should have about 15 to 20 minutes for audience questions and answers. They could be directed to specific panelists or to the entire panel. So cities. One way to think of cities have been conceptualized along many different registers. But for the purpose of this panel, one of the better ways to sort of think about cities is central places, right? So giant open countryside and cities as central places where all kinds of densities are densified. So think of people's density, think of density of infrastructure, think of density of poverty, think of density of plurality of ideas, right? Cities are dense networks that sort of bring together things tightly packed in small physical space. So when we think of cities along this lens, we realize that cities have been central to the way protests have happened historically. A good way to think about is different kinds of revolution. So if you think of the Russian Revolution was essentially headquartered in cities, so the city of Moscow and Leningrad, right? The French Revolution was headquartered in Paris and eventually terminated or reached its conclusion with the beheading of the ruling class, right? So cities are central to protest, and these densities that, when they're brought together in closer space, create all sort of magical combinations. Governments oftentimes and historically essentially are deaf. Dumb also, but mostly deaf. They do not really listen unless people are out on the streets and do all kinds of things that sort of bring them to pay some attention to what's going on. That's one thing to keep in mind. But also remember the professions of architecture and urban planning and urban design, every profession that sort of deals with built environment, especially with these revolutions, right? So the social and the political revolutions in the 18th and 19th century, and also the Industrial Revolution, have worked together. The professions have worked together to create cities that are more legible and easy to police. Policing was one of the main reasons that the historical urban fabric with all its convoluted routes was opened up and we had straight roads. Why did we have straight roads? Why was Houseman so big on straight roads? Because the police can shoot easily, right? The police likes the clear line of sight. If you have to police an intricate web of urban space, very difficult to police that, right? So imagine, so we have inherited that legacy. Our disciplines are culprit in sort of ensuring that cities are policed and cities are legible so that state can govern and shape them they want, right? So that's one backdrop we want to keep in mind, right? And we will be happy to hear what the panelists have to say. And the second point we want to keep in mind is the idea of social change. Some processes of social change happen slowly and gradually and incrementally and peacefully. So think of girl education and women empowerment in this country. It's only in about 2-3 generations. I think of my grandmother's generation as the first set of women who actually started formal schooling. And today, all of us should take pride in this, that within a few generations, this country, girls have sort of outscored men when it comes to higher education, and increasingly in the United States and many other parts of the world, right? So that's sort of slow, gradual, incremental social change. That's the kind of social change we like. But then oftentimes the social change comes on the back of moments of turmoil. And that turmoil oftentimes is centered in cities, right? And this is across the world. We can think of many ongoing political movements where cities and their central spaces and public spaces are oftentimes the venue where this social change is rapid and quick. And if this had not happened, many things would not have happened, like popular democracy or the idea of 40 hours a week. I know most architects like to work 80 to 100 hours a week, but the notion of 40 hours a week came out of the communist movement. Remember this, right? So rapid and abruptive and disruptive political change that sort of brings on quick social change is oftentimes, history tells us, has not been a bad example to think of. So keep these two ideas in mind, and then we'll see what our panelists have to tell us. With that note, I'll turn over, so we will go down the alphabetical order and invite our first speaker on the stage. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is very sleepy time for you guys. I hope I can make you awake, but I'm not sure I can do that. Given only 5 to 7 minutes, I'm not sure I can make a presentation. And I supposed to have, 10 minutes, but moderator cut down to 7 minutes. I will do my best. This is my honor and privilege to be invited to Rajasthan Architect Festival. With so many distinguished speakers, I experienced very excellent presentation yesterday and this morning, and I am enjoying. Also sensing that the cultural difference between India and Korea is huge, but I still enjoying the difference while I'm staying in Jaipur. Today I'll brief about the role of city architect, which is a new system in Korea, in delivering, in improving social perception of architects, and also quality of public buildings. Cannot go through all details within given time, but I will do my best to give you framework of city architect in Korea. I wonder how you know about Korea. My fellows is talking about young generation know about the K-drama, K-pop. You know Gangnam Style, right? And also BTS is big right now. Also Squid Game in Netflix is hot right now. But Korea is a very small country with population of 50 million, but now reducing population right now since last year, with lowest birth rate in the world. It's kind of serious problem. And changing in Korea is really dynamic. Liberated in 1945, have a miserable war, as a Korean War, called 51 to 53. And then we have 70s, we have a new village movement, a so-called Semaul movement, led by past president. It has set up some groundstone of today's Korea. And then always we have people's demonstration against politicians. And Gwangju 518 in 1980 showed that strong power of people and make dictator step down. That's a kind of big thing. And then we really surprised to see that the younger generation gathering like this in 2002 for World Cup and cheering that national team. And then start to see the political leaders not to underestimate power of people. And then still we are going on at the 2016 candle demonstration against corrupted president and make her step down, this part. And then other side, the Korean the redevelopment has been very strong in developing cities. And the political leaders has always think about the providing number of house only to get more vote for their political victory. And called as apartment republic. It's kind of a shame. And you may see that Seoul is so dynamic, but in living in Seoul like this, and also still, the government and the political leader is providing new city like this, which is bad town. It looks very nice, but I'm not sure how we live in there. And it can start to create some the social problem, disconnected and isolated society. And in 2014, and Songpa 3 family members killed themselves due to economic difficulties. But no one noticed for 2 weeks. A serious problem. The living in apartment, is really close to each other, but never know who is living, what they are doing. That's kind of things happening. And also aged society, following like Japan, and sharp increase in senior citizen population, along with elderly living alone. So that's more serious. You can see it in the table. And then architect and some political leader in one way try to restore the city in a way, because when they visit a European city, they see some difference between Korean city and European historical city. Then to start to set up some kind of group talks between architects and working for several years and to be able to build some new architectural law, which is architectural fundamental law in 2007. While that existing building code is only focused on physical entity of architecture. It's seeing that architecture is being considered as a physical entity, not cultural asset. And this new law provide basis of architecture policy commission and Polish public architecture system in each municipal government. That's kind of a new kind of movement in Korea. And city architecture system that began at the Yeongju city, which is a very small city in south side, but has been very successful. Then Seoul Metro government followed that, the public architect system in 2013. And I worked for Architecture Policy Commission in Seoul Metropolitan for 6 years. And now it's 30 cities and municipal government has adopted this city architecture system. Let's talk about Cheongju City, which is my hometown. So that's why I'm dedicating my time and volunteering to do city architect. City architect is not full-time job. It's a part-time job and volunteering for the public service. The Cheongju City is called as the Jikji City. You can see that the typical land, and also City of Chungbuk Provincial Government Office. And the population is 850,000. After united with Cheongwon, you can see over here in the red mark. I have to go fast. It also has 1,500 history, but the citizen doesn't enjoy what history about it. And the Jikji is the world oldest metal type invented in 1378, which is earlier than Gutenberg's one. And also you can see it's an old castle in the city. And then, the mayor started to think about it, because he is respect more cultural asset, just start to think about adopting a city architect in 2019. And I was invited as a professional advisor for Cheongju City International Design Competition. And now I'm working as a city architect and working with 30 public architects, 15 local architects and 15 from Seoul, because they have more experience. And like a city architect, to be recognized as the deputy mayor or the mayor, working with the public architect and supported by city council, and had 4 key activities like that. Oops, I have only hop through. Since Cheongju City Hall International Design Competition, I changed it. At the second 2-stage design competition from 1-stage design competition to open up design competition to the more architect and to be more architectural festival. And the winner was the Sonata, based in Hong Kong. And I'm managing the public, the building deliberative committee is actually the manipulating all that design competition. And now, all public building has to go through design competition. That is a good thing. And you can see that all the outputs of design competition. I've been able to manage about more than 20 design competition for all the public, small, and big the projects. Also, the Public Architect Steering Committee, working with a public architect, is doing all matters in public building the delivery system. Also, managing spatial environmental strategic plan, which coordinate with the urban plan. And actually, as an architect, I look at more detail in three-dimensional space. I'm not sure that we have urban planner here, but seems to me like a city planning is based on two-dimensional basis. And as an architect, we look at more three-dimensional space and to look at some potential public projects from those recessed area of Cheongju City. So actually, I'm looking at some downtown area for the phase 1, and the second phase 2 is combining for original city centers. And also, I'm providing some 3D image and the small model of the city and to open up to citizens. The citizen come to the city hall and see what's going on their own city. Doing a lot of the apartment development is going on right now. And also through that the spatial environmental strategic plan, set up some specific the project, potential project for the future in short term, like 20 around it. And then also working with the public architect, and I talk about like a local architect. I have to strengthen their ability to design. So I also put more interest for their community. So I'm asking them to generate a public interest map, which want to create 10-minute community. So it's communities gathering to make a better connected society. And also, this is examples they are generating. And also, I'm as a city architect, I try to, excavate some potential public project, very small project. I'm not really focusing on the bigger project because and everybody notice bigger projects is important, but smaller public buildings is next to you is more important, like a community center or children's care center, senior facilities are very close to citizens, which are more important to have better quality. So I'm working around it whenever I have time, and then dig out some potential projects. And the first project I did for the Central Park of Cheongju, the Central Park is a historical park, but elderly people at the gathering there and gambling and drinking, and so the younger generation cannot go there and enjoy. That's a problem. So I suggest to mayor to have a very small project. One is toilet remodeling project done by Seoul public architect, and very nicely is working with the historical asset behind it, and also student design competition for the pavilion. So we select like a the student team and make pavilion, let them make a pavilion and stay about 2 months. So the citizens come in and enjoy. This is the last one. Let me finish it. So the agency, the architect, it's trying to work with the resident, and also at the top, working with mayor and also policymakers, and also in the middle, so working with the public architect. Want to make a 10-minute community like this, and as this is whole map, as all white is a community center. We have 424 community centers. Probably this is about 320 community center. It's like a star in the sky. You can imagine that star is connected in our mind, right? So it's changing our city from mega city to meta city, which is better connected. That's what we are doing it. Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, it took too long.
So let's welcome on stage architect Naresh V. Narasimhan.
Can we get the presentation on, please? Can you widen it? Full screen. Okay, I'm sorry, everything is going to look slightly crunched. Okay. When I was asked to speak on cities, protest and social change, I have been involved with the city of Bangalore's civic government as well as various citizen-led initiatives for the past 25 years now or more. And about some years ago, I started saying that there's no point. Architects, we think we rule the world, but nobody else thinks so. Nobody will give us access to the source code, but we can change the planet if they do. So I said this has got to stop, and if architects don't get involved in cities, then who is going to do it? So I want you to just walk all of you through a short presentation on the history of, cities have always been the crucible of protest movements and of social change. And today, more and more, even if there are small minorities in Indian cities, their numbers actually constitute a big enough constituent of the city to be able to actually make a change. Yeah. How do I operate this? Okay. All right. So the idea of class in a city comes from the ancient Roman civilization, where they had this thing called sexatio plebs, where the elite were a separate class and there was no real middle class at that time. And then there were the plebeians who lived at the bottom of the pyramid. And there was this giant gap between the two of them, the patricians who sat in the Senate and the common people who, but at one point in Rome's history, the plebs got together, and that's why the word plebeian comes from, got together, and everybody just one day got up and left the city. They did an exodus and left all the rich people to themselves. And only then the thing started becoming, the sense of equality and fairness and inclusion comes from that point onwards. So the question to ask is, who has a right to the city? Is it the rich people? Is it the people who control the bureaucrats or the politicians? Or is it the common people? And does everybody have a right to the city? Or is it just the powerful and the wealthy, right? So cities, as I said, have been the crucible of change. And you see this all over the world now, that starting with our own father of the nation, the Dandi March, which it was an extraordinary event because he coordinated before the internet, before the telephone, and before the radio was controlled by the British. Every single city in India, at that time, almost about 350 places in India, broke the law exactly at the same time by picking salt. The salt, there was supposed to be a tax paid on salt. But how did Gandhi pull that off? I did some research. How did he coordinate? Now we have internet and we have Facebook groups. But what did he do? And it was an extraordinary thing that he did. He wrote the announcement of this protest on an open postcard and signed it M.K. Gandhi and sent it to somebody in every city. The postman, by the time Gandhi was already famous, the postman was very happy because he actually got a postcard signed by M.K. Gandhi and showed it to everyone. And it became a huge social movement just using the postcard, which cost 3 paisa or something like that at that time. That was all the cost of a postcard. So the first mass mobilization in the history of India, actually you can credit it to Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. How do I operate this? Is there a... Maybe switch it on and off or something. There's some button on the side. Okay, I get 1 minute extra. No, it's not working. Make it go forward, you make it go backward. Do you have another one? Go to the next slide. You mean there are 3? Can I repair this? Can somebody else talk? I can come back. Okay. What do we do?
Technical hitch. We'll have architect Rahul Kadri on the stage. Please, sir. Welcome on stage, architect Rahul Kadri.
Thank you. So firstly, I think it's been absolutely outstanding and wonderful for all of us to be here. So thank you so much. IAA Rajasthan and Tushar in particular for inviting me. So I'm going to be talking about something a little different, about impact and really about how, because of certain projects in the country and the changing climate and the autocracy with which large projects are happening, it's created a movement of protest within architects and people. And I think it's led us to introspect a lot of what Narasimhan was saying, and if we can learn from the South African, the Korean model, I think that model is amazing, and I'm sure we'd want to learn more about it, how it works exactly. But what I want to talk about is what's happened because of this sense of outrage of what's been happening in the cities, feel the need for citizen participation in planning has never been greater. So I want to just propose a model on how it could possibly work, because as architects and planners and decision makers, I think all of us believe that people don't really know. And what will they say? What do they know? And I think that's a little, should I say, arrogant of us. But that's what people in power always do. They are arrogant about that they have the knowledge and nobody else does. And democracy is about that. It's about the decision-making percolating down. So I want to propose a model. I think that pointer is not here. So next. So I think these are some of the projects that have created the outrage. Ahmedabad has one, Delhi has one, Mumbai has one, and these are projects that have really created an outrage in all of us and brought us together in protest. So I feel citizens' participation as a democratic planning process really would strengthen our social fabric. I think it could be an experiment, if in nothing else, in having us talk to each other. In modern cities, the way they're configured and planned and the way our lives are, we don't know our neighbors. We don't talk to our neighbors. In Mumbai in particular, there's people living in high-rises and people living in slums, cheek by jowl, but they don't talk to each other at all. It's always them. On either side, it's them. And we villainize each other. So besides building the city, dealing with accessibility issues, I think community spaces and creating a sense of shared identity would be a byproduct of this. Sorry. Am I going forwards, backwards? So we've spoken about these iconic projects have really brought us together in protest. So I've kind of thought through what could be the steps for citizen participation. So step one would be workshops with citizens to articulate what they actually want. Because, people living in a neighborhood actually know what they need. There's no planner who can presume what people need in the neighborhood. No matter how intelligent you are, no matter how good your system for gathering data is, you will never know as much as the people living there. So actually talking to citizens, finding out what they really want. And if few of these projects, even one project can happen in a year, you can imagine in 20 years, 20 projects can happen. So real, true improvement on the ground can happen based on what people really want. And at least in Bombay, we know that the municipal corporation just wastes money. You'll see some new railing coming up, and then next year they'll rip it open, and then another new railing will come. It's like, what is this money being spent on? And I'm sure this is the same all over. So citizen workshops, prioritize the projects. Once they're prioritized, because you can't do everything, we don't have money for everything, so we prioritize them based on, okay, this year, this is the most important thing we will do. Then the government develops a brief for it based on what the citizens want, and then holds a competition for the project. So the government has kind of caught on to the idea of a competition. So, but what is it based on? Who gives the brief? Who designs the brief? Who really wants the product? So that's why, so competition really comes at the end of a 3-month process, rather than starting with the competition imagined by someone. And then after the competition, it's the known route: select the design, tender, and execute. So the most important things to ask is, who are the stakeholders for the project? What are their needs and aspirations? Mumbai, we've got the largest chunk of land now, the eastern waterfront, 800 acres of land. And so there's a new master plan, but the consultative process of who is it for? What do the people living there and people living around really want? So there is always levels of stakeholders, but in this case, nobody has been spoken to. And that's the case in most of the projects in the city. Citizens are not a part of the process. So who is it for? What are their needs and aspirations, and what is the order of importance of these features? So identification of the stakeholders would be, people already living there, people living in the adjacent areas, and probably the rest of the city, depending on the scale of the project. You'd have to identify who the stakeholders are. And if we could have the Korean model, where there is a city architect or even an architect of the ward initiating the project, I think that could be an added thing. So, a ward in Mumbai is rather large. So I've thought it should be broken up into neighborhoods of 5-minute walk. I mean, they spoke about 10-minute walk, but 5-minute walk neighborhoods. And those neighborhoods kind of meet, develop their ideas, see what needs to be done within the neighborhood, and propose things. There could be a process. So we in our office use Scrum a lot. So all stakeholders meet, they brainstorm on what their highest aspirations are. After you brainstorm, you focus on what the highest aspirations are. So use the 80-20 principle. 20% of the features give you 80% of the value. So you want to identify which are the improvements you want to do that's going to have the maximum benefit. You're going to get the maximum happiness for the neighborhood. So the utilitarian principle. And then review as you go. So you can have a master list made for a decade, and then maybe after a year or two, you review it. Are we doing what we still need, or have things changed? And then you have a feedback mechanisms. So citizens briefing meetings initially to start with, some of this is written into our codes. Is that the second or the third? 2 minutes left, 1 minute left? No time left? Okay. So then you have the competition, right? And then it happens. Next thing, sorry, I'm just going to very quickly touch upon this, is 50% of people in Mumbai live in slums. And it's really the density. And in India, a population of 70 million people live on the streets. That's more than South Korea. It's 51 million. So that entire country lives on the streets of India. So that's the scale of the problem. Mumbai itself needs 10 million homes. The main problem really is density. Density in Mumbai is 20,000 people in the residential area, 1,21,000, and in a slum it's three times that. We've so far been following the developer model, wherein there's a slum pocket, a developer comes in, promises free homes for people, subsidizes by selling, but a completely flawed model because it increases the density of the already dense slum by 3 times, and leads to, really everybody squeezed in, so the light and ventilation, etc., is much, much worse. And I think all of you all have seen what happens over here. And the other thing is that we need 3 million homes. And as per the current rate of 26 years when the SRA scheme is going to take us more than 150 years to solve the problem. So clearly, this is not a method that's going to solve the problem. So what we're saying is that we need to have community-led development, all kinds of benefits, especially empowering women to participate in what kind of spaces they need. And we worked out the math on this. So it creates affordable homes. Families contribute. The government gives incentives only in terms of cheaper loans. And we've taken a live slum, which had 5,000 homes, and looked at how it could have been redeveloped. So this was an existing slum in Wadala, Mumbai. And we found that you don't have to build 30-story buildings. You could have buildings varying 6 to 12 floors with lots of courtyards, terraces, etc. And we worked out the math of it. And just to say it very short, when you work out the math of it, where each household gets a loan and contributes 5,000 a month for 30 years, this project can happen, and you actually can create a surplus. We sell 10% of these homes, and these are also affordable homes. This is not homes then for the rich, it's for the same class of people. Sell those also at a highly subsidized rate. Even then, this is a very profitable project, and you can create a surplus. So this is just the math saying that. That's it. Thank you.
Once again, we have architect Naresh, sir.
Fingers crossed. It's working. I hope so. All right. So let me just flip through the first 3 parts. Okay. I think we stopped here, right? Okay. My notes. I'm sorry. I always bring it on a pen drive in case this happens. This one time I didn't. Okay, lesson learned. All right, so I was telling you how Gandhi used the clever example of using an open postcard with his signature to create a social movement. So it can be something as simple as that, but it's such a brilliant idea that changed India forever. And now recently you have seen this now happening at India Gate, whether it's to protest the brutal rape of a young girl or, maybe even pollution, or you see people, the idea that a public space and a visible public space is used for citizen protests has become more and more visible in India in the past few years. So the defining factor of a city, the density, its size, and the diversity of its population actually creates contention of the ownership of public space itself. Who has the right to the city? Correct? And you notice that this is happening not just in India, but all over the world. Many of you have seen the Occupy Wall Street, their protest against corporate greed, the 1% and 99% revolution, right? And you also see on the Gurgaon Expressway, people protesting against, people jamming a corridor to protest against fuel prices. And I come now to the example, what I am involved in. About 7 years ago, the government of Karnataka, you see, that's one, I hope, with no offense to any engineers here, but I feel that Indian cities are run by a cabal of transportation engineers, vested bureaucrats, and corrupt politicians, which is a tremendous nexus, which works with a contractor-led projects. And they keep putting flyovers and horrible public infrastructure, grey infrastructure, and destroying the city. All the beauty we do as architects, we want to make fantastic spaces. We've saw a lot of presentations in the last 2 days. Is completely ruined because in India, you can go and sit in a classy place and you could be anywhere in the world. And all you do is step out on the out of your compound onto the main road and your foot goes straight into a ditch with running sewage in it. This happens outside a 5-star hotel. Why is it that we cannot make our outdoors as good as our indoors? Our indoors in India are now sometimes 11 on 10. I've seen interior design particularly, which has gone beyond what even the West can do. But the outside is -10, right, everywhere. And the problem is the government. And it is this cabal of transportation planners who wants to build flyovers and roads, and the politician who likes flyovers because you don't have to acquire much land, and there's enough money to be made quickly, you can put some, and all a flyover does is move traffic from one congestion point to the next congestion point. This is what I call band-aid urbanism. Band-aids don't last long. You remember, they wash off after a few days. So this is band-aid planning, band-aid urban planning for India. And in the Karnataka government, I wouldn't say in its wisdom, wanted to put a 10-kilometer long flyover in the most scenic drive of Bangalore. The most scenic drive of Bangalore is from the center to the new airport. It's a beautiful drive with a lot of trees and big open spaces. And they wanted to put this super ugly flyover in the middle. And they, for some reason, and to my luck, they called it the steel flyover. And I just said, change the damn spelling. It's S-T-E-A-L. You're stealing the city from us and stealing money. It's not this thing. So and the other strange thing about Bangalore is it's such a cosmopolitan place. It's the only city in India where you don't have to know the local language. You can speak Tamil, you can speak Urdu, you can speak Hindi, you can speak English, and if you like, you can speak Kannada. And the standard, all people from outside, you ask them, they say Kannad Gottila. They can't even say Kannada Gottila, which is super annoying to us from the city. Right? So I said, okay, this is a great campaign. We will use this steel thing. And we said we'll also teach all of Bangalore 2 Kannada words. One which says Beda, which means no. And Beku, which means yes. The only 2 words for everybody. And the entire campaign was called Beda. We don't want it. Right? And Bangalore is a strange city. See what Jawaharlal Nehru said in 1962. He said every Indian city, like today we saw a lot of heritage and all that, it reminds you of the past. But Bangalore has no smokestack industry history. It has no polluting industries at all in its past. And it's always a city of the future. No, now you got to give me a little extra time. So I can. And it used to look like this in the 60s. Beautiful town hall, lovely boulevards and all that. And even now it looks like this. It's known as the Garden City, the Cubbon Park, which is like a dense forest in the middle of the city. This is exactly the center of Bangalore. It's unbelievable, actually. Yeah, don't migrate there just because I said so, but okay. It also is known as this is actually one of my projects. It's actually it's not so much the buildings. I started getting involved in a lot of how to create public spaces that are inclusive to everybody. And there was a big pushback many years ago against this gated community. A gated community is not just villas inside a compound. It's also an apartment building because you can't go in unless you have a piece there. And the whole idea of thoroughfares, connections between the city in India are completely cut because we don't allow, like for instance, many places in the US, like for instance, Harvard University in Boston, is on the streets of Boston. Anybody can be there. And the whole idea was to create an ungated space. So you see the space down there. There's a big mall and an office building. That's the headquarters of Amazon in India. But you see the space with the lake is recycled sewage. And you see the space outside. It's the largest ungated mixed-use community. I wanted to make it's a public-private property or a private-public. Anybody can go in. There's no pressure to buy anything. You can play in that place. You can hang around with your children. And nobody will ask you anything. So I use this as an example to show politicians how you could do this in a public space. Right? But the ground reality of Bangalore, this is one reality. Everybody thinks, this is the image you'll get when you put it on Google. But this is what it is. 4 days ago. Right? Completely disaster in terms of flood management. And all this is poor engineering. It's not rocket science. We somehow can send a rocket to Mars, but we can't fix sewage. There's something wrong with us. Right? And look at and people always blame it on, oh, we couldn't do anything. The population doubled within 10 years. Nobody can catch up with this. But I've been hearing this population increase story for the past 20 years. But nobody still does anything about it. So we also have, this was the great elevated corridor which was planned in Bangalore, cutting across the city 20 feet above the ground, 30 feet above the ground, and would have destroyed the fabric of the city and prioritized cars over people. There are only 10 lakh cars in Bangalore. There are 1.3 crore people in the city. And instead of putting money behind people, the government wants to work with the road lobby and the car lobby to increase individual transport rather than prioritizing public transit. Right? So this was the news item in the newspaper. And it was announced, contract was awarded, not a single citizen consultation. So we all, about me and a group of friends, got together and started an organization called Citizens for Bangalore, CFB, and said, okay, let's try and see what we can do. And we also spoke, it was actually the first demonstration of the power of social media. For the first 2 weeks, nothing happened. We tried making a noise, nobody would listen to us. And then one young person came and asked me, do you know what is Facebook Live? I never heard of it. And he interviewed me on Facebook, and he was the first influencer I ever met in my life. And he had 5,000 followers or something like that. So he interviewed me on Facebook Live on that location where the thing was going to start. By the time I went home, it was 10,000 likes. By the evening, it was 1 lakh. And by next morning, I was on national television talking about it. It was incredible, the power of the Facebook. And you know, I still hadn't discovered Instagram at that time. It's even better. Okay. And we also got into traditional media. Sorry, I'll take 5 more minutes, that's all. And then we started saying, one more. It's an interesting campaign. I think all Indian cities should see it. We also started saying, you keep saying they'll cut trees. But when you put a picture of a tree and say green or side, everybody jumps. If you just read an article saying trees getting cut, nobody pays attention. So we started working with publicity agencies, media people, and suddenly there was after that Facebook Live went crazy, we got something like 10,000 volunteers writing to us saying, what can we do? And then we approached we have a tree panel, then nobody asked them. But they were going to cut about 900 trees. Right? And then we used the power of architectural design. And like somebody else pointed out, make me the ugliest building ever. I think Marina said this morning. I also told my office, please take the view. This is the kind of, I already don't like that pedestrian overpass, but look at the tree there. And this is what they wanted to do. You know, and I said, make the ugliest rendering you have ever done in your life. I want to see that. Right? And there is a beautiful circle here called Ringwood Circle surrounded by trees. And there is a saint, Basveshwara, who is the patron saint of Karnataka. I'm looking at it he's sitting behind me. I'm looking at that circle. And I said, after this flyover, this is what he is going to see. So how to make an ugly rendering using 3D Max? This is and you know, I don't think it was as ugly as this, but I made it ugly just to irritate everyone. And look at this kind of nonsense stuff, you know. And then it became a viral thing, and the whole city took off. People started making their own 100 filmmakers made short films. People started making their own graphics. And then we said we have to bring this to a boil. So we said we'll build a human chain from the entire length of the 10 kilometers on both sides of the road. We thought 200 people will come. So 12,000 people turned up. It's like look at that. It's like all the judges came, all the citizens came, all the children came. And it became, that was the sign. That was all the campaign. No, Beda. In Kannada it says Beda. And we won. To cut a long story short, and we won. And it was the point at which the government also realized that they can't do anything in the city without talking to the people. And they've tried it multiple times after that, but that's got nipped in the bud even before it became anything, right? So I'll come to the end. So what makes a city? The city is what I call wrong spelling. It's a Gordian knot. A Gordian knot is something which cannot be untied. And when Alexander the Great was asked to unravel the Gordian knot, he tried, it didn't work. So he took out his sword and cut it in half, and it unraveled on its own. So sometimes you have to do that, take some kind of action in a city with what seems to be an intractable problem and just cut the damn thing in half, right? So and I also don't understand why we use Western planning principles to plan Indian cities. We still hear terms called CBD. This is the rotten fossil fuel idea of America, where all the office buildings are in one place and everybody lives in some suburb. And at that time, when they thought petrol would go on forever and drive 50 kilometers to work every day. In India is a mixed-use country. Right next to your office, there will be a house. Behind your office, there'll be a market. That is the strength of India. Why do we think that we have to take some fossil fuel era idea from America and use these terms are embedded into Indian planning law. And I've been now fighting saying remove all of it. And India already has an organizing principle for cities. And it has ancient textbooks. This is the 13th century textbook. All of you know Vastu, and all of us are annoyed with Vastu. But there is a town planning text called Samarangana Sutradhara from the 13th. We've forgotten everything. Right? And we also know the Panchabhutas or the Panchatattvas, the space, air, energy, water, earth. All we have to do is add technology to this and put a metric on each one. How much open space? How clean will be your air? What are your sources of energy? What kind of water do you want to drink and how much? And how do we overall look at the Prithvi as our mother and not as something to exploit? So, I'll end with this slide. Cities often become a theater of global transformation. The moment you come together and define a collective agenda, and of course use Facebook and Instagram nowadays, I think that we can change our cities, and architects should take over from engineers and from this cabal of people who actually think they can run our cities. Thank you.
Sir, please may we welcome architect Sheila Shri Prakash on stage.
Good evening. Thank you, IIA Rajasthan, for having me here. And such a debatable and lovely topic, because we are all citizens first. We all belong to a city, whichever part of India we are from. So my take is very different. I had originally thought that, I would be a fire starter or spark of a conversation, spark off a debate among all of us, so that we see what will ensue. So anyway, let me kind of summarize. Being the last speaker is always advantageous, so you can modulate your speech the way it has to be. So here, yeah? Here goes. Okay, why did I put this on? This is the Mona Lisa. We all believe it's beautiful. Da Vinci's, great gem of creation. But I think that if the canvas was not there, Da Vinci wouldn't have been able to paint such a beautiful painting. So I believe that as architects, we are designers within the macrocosmos, which has been given to us by providence, by nature. And here we are messing with it, meddling with it, sometimes resonating with it, but We create the canvas. So that's why I had that slide. So cities are really the canvases on which humanity can work and realize their potential and their purpose in life. So why did I have this slide? We all come from a country which is, ferociously loving about cricket. So we go mad with all our cricket matches. So if you just think back and see how these cricket matches happen, in some places I have heard our cricketers will do excellent work in Chepauk Stadium or in Eden Garden. Some other cricket ground is not so good. I think what makes the cricketers play and bring out their full potential and enjoy the game and win for the country is in fact the spectators there. So I think cities have citizens and citizens are these spectators. And who are the players? Any guesses? The governance. Because I think all decisions are being taken by the government. So if the government has to perform well, citizens have to participate. Citizens have to be in a position to kind of, collaborate, to give positive suggestion. But what really happens is, since I have been trying to create this nexus between the government and the people, I find that there is always a certain distrust. The government distrusts the people distrust the government. So where is the question of working together? It is a very big challenge. Government wants to use public participation as a checkbox. And I think people range from being totally indifferent to what's happening to being, can I say, negative activists on the other spectrum, where they just want to stall a process for the sake of stalling a process, which is frustrating to the government. So being on the, when, I sit on this side and that side. So, when I sit on the smart city, I find that the bureaucrats are really, terrified about people. So how do we form these ecosystems which lead us to posterity, where we believe that cities are for citizens and the government is empowered to create the infrastructure for the citizens on the city canvas? So I think that is completely missing. So I come from Chennai. So let me just tell you the bane of Chennai right now. So this was the Buckingham Canal. We have two rivers. We depend on water by the rains, the water that comes off from the Western Ghats, which flows east, the remnants of whatever is taken by Bangalore and other cities. So, we depend on a lot of wetlands for, our groundwater storage. So this was the Buckingham Canal, which was a beautiful waterway connecting two rivers. But that is the status of Buckingham Canal right now. So who is to blame? Government? Yes, definitely. There's no enforcement, there's no cleanliness, there's no maintenance. People? Yes. Because we contribute to the filth and we just don't care. And then we say there are mosquitoes, it's stinky, all kinds of things. So this is a building, the Higginbotham's building on Mount Road. And can you see the Higginbotham's building on Mount Road? Sorry. I've gone back now. How do I go back? Yeah. So there you can see the Higginbotham's building. and then you can see the crowd, and you can see how Mount Road has become an amorphous mass of concrete. No guidelines, buildings, vying with each other for supremacy, for aesthetic appeal, and it's absolute chaos. So who's responsible? Again, government and people. This was the harbor. That is the fishing harbor now. That is again because people have moved into Chennai, and the number of people from the villages, the exodus from the villages coming into the cities, is there in any city in search of a better livelihood? So that is what happens. This was the Pallikaranai marsh. We believe in wetlands, and it was a beautiful marshland, which is now full of garbage. So the government has started dumping all the garbage into that area. So this is our temple in Mylapore, which is a very sacred. One thing about all these cities I have noticed is that they were all small, beautiful villages. And these villages had very intrinsic strengths. See, Mylapore had the temple, had art around it, had their Kanjivaram saris, their coffee. Okay, you just imagine the way I'm saying it. It's a lovely, lovely place with music, performances, and simple life. Whereas the town area was commerce, was the harbor, was trade, and then we had Triplicane, and then we had Purusvakam, we had Adyar. So we had, these little villages, all separate and, thriving and throbbing with their own character. And then what happened? The city happened. So they were all brought together and made into one conglomerate with absolutely no. So we are not proud of our strengths. So as long as people are not proud or don't own their cities, how would you expect them to contribute to the city? More so because today you have people from other states and other countries coming in who hardly feel for the city. So if there isn't an ambience which is conducive to this feeling of ownership, you cannot collaborate or you cannot contribute positively. This is our beach, Marina Beach, and this is how it is. Licenses have been given for all these stalls, so there is a horse ride, there is, everybody, there are plastic chairs, there's plastic strewn all over the place. Fine, you need all that. But in what way? How should it be regulated? What is enforcement? In our government, in our departments, they have budgets for planning, but they don't have budgets or staff for enforcement. This is again the OMR. These are the kinds of buildings that come up. The housing at the back, and that's the TCS headquarters. Individually, lovely spaces, but together, chaos. This is on OMR, so we like to emulate Western countries and Western peers and are not bothered about our cardinal points. We want glassy, glitzy buildings, but our air conditioning should work, so you use reflective glass. So it's reflecting the whole street on the building. So not enough to have chaos on the road, you're having chaos on the vertical surface. Is that what the builder required? Is that what we need? So now, last two slides. So cities are continuously growing in size. Even for a site, an individual site, we do a bearing capacity, you do a capacity study. You say that this much density, this much is the infrastructure, this is the water available. For a city, what do? It grows endlessly. It grows along all the national highways. then it has inadequate infrastructure, it has inadequate planning, and it has enforcement challenges. So this is what is facing our cities today. And as far as protest goes, protest is, I can only see it between citizens and governance, but I'm very proud to say that Madras had a lovely protest recently for the Jallikattu issue. I don't know if you all followed that, but it was such a peaceful, lovely protest where all the citizens sat on the beach with a candle. I have never seen that, till the politicians came and instigated some mischief, right? So this is what we are in terms of protest. So social change. So what is the social change that you need? You need first to trust. You need to believe that you're a part of the humanity and that we are all part of humanity, and therefore we should share. And though we belong to each other, the world belongs to us, just as the world belongs to the government. Accountability, it's absolutely zilch. You stay in a place, you spit on the place, you dirty the place, and you get out. That cannot go on. Responsibility, yes, as a fraternity, I think we are really responsible. I may be idealizing it a bit much, but I think we are next to God because we create the ambience for people to survive and to realize their dreams. Ownership, sense of ownership is required. As Naresh, who said it, Rahul, I think, said that within a space, we take care of our space. The interiors are the best. But what happens just outside your gate? Nobody cares. So what is the sense? Where does this sense of ownership last? And how much can it be? And of course, collaboration. But all this can happen only if there is a certain size which is manageable. Beyond a particular size, it doesn't lead to collaboration. It only leads to chaos. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. So with that, I call once again our speakers on the stage. Yes, sir.
Yeah, wherever convenient. Yes. So, unfortunately, we're running out of time. It would not, each panel has its own dynamic. 4 wonderful set of papers, but we do not really have any time left for a discussion among ourselves. But what I can actually do is to take a couple questions. But before we do that, I want to summarize for the folks who came in late and the folks.
We have till 5.
No, we started 3:15. I kept a track. We can either share or we can just have, order a la carte. That's fine. It worked out great. So we had 4 excellent papers, sort of covering different geographies, different sizes of cities, and different kinds of issues. And the interesting bit was that, both social change and the kind of protests that have taken place were central to it. So Chun started by talking about role of public architects, which I thought was a very interesting idea, promoting progressive civic spaces. Naresh then turned our attention to architects leading civic activism. Kind of rare, architects sort of do many other things, but not really lead civic activism. So I thought that was a fantastic presentation describing how he himself sort of played that role. And then Rahul turned attention towards a model approach and steps for centering citizen participation in place-based civic improvement projects. And Sheila finally brought us home, bridging divides, promoting civic pride for making better places. So with that note, that sort of summarizes what the 4 papers did for us. I'm happy to take a couple questions. All right. Reena.
I would like to ask Rahul the question. what I saw in Udaipur, where public participation was there for UID, SSMT and city development projects, was that obviously you can't get the whole city together. So you get different sets of groups of people. So one of the aspects was what was to be done to the water bodies in the city. And what I saw as part of my research was that the hotelier's livelihood depends on the lakes. The marble quarrying which happens, which destroys the catchment of the lake, their livelihood is dependent or...
Let's get to the question, Reena.
Yeah. So dhobis and fishermen, they're all different sets of people, but they have different political clout. And therefore, the participation process gets skewed. How do you rectify that? That is question number one. And question number two is that until or unless there is a accountability that this person is responsible if this does not happen, and if it doesn't happen in so much time, then also the public participation process fails. So how do you think we should, kind of deal with that?
Yeah, so I think that these kind of issues are definitely bound to come up and very real world. People have different aspirations. It's not working. Can you hear me? Yes? No? Yeah, so these are definitely very real world problems, and issues like this are definitely going to come up. So what I suggested is that, and the most important part of this is getting everybody in the same room at the same time. That's one. So that's the difficult part, getting everybody in the same room or in some forum together to get what everybody wants up on either some notice boards, or we use whiteboards, or just chart paper on the wall, where you don't filter anybody's aspiration. Whatever anybody wants, whatever features they want, gets put up. So once everybody feels heard, that my point of view is up there, that's when the democratic process comes in, wherein everybody doesn't get a vote, everybody gets to vote on how important that particular feature is. You go down the list of each of the features and and everybody gives a number. So we've used the Fibonacci numbers 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, so that you're not just saying A, B, C or 1, 2, 3 what's important. You want to know what's hugely important and what's not so important. So when you go around the room and everybody gets a vote on a number, what do you think about this feature? What number would you give it based on public good, based on what's best for everyone? So we're hoping for an honesty in that sense. So you will often get the similar number but there are times when you'll get very varied numbers. Someone will say 34 and someone will say 3. So it's only when there's a big difference in the numbers is there a discussion. Why are you saying 34 and why are you saying 13? So you have that discussion there so that different points of view are heard and known. And then after the discussion is over, you have a revote to see if anybody has changed their mind. If it's still a contentious thing, then it's really put aside. That there's no consensus on this particular thing, so we will not be prioritizing this. So that's how I feel it could work, but it's still, I think it would be a process to discover what is the best way to make it happen. But I found this, so far, this to be the easiest, the most democratic way, so that nobody dominates the room. Someone who shouts the loudest doesn't tend to dominate the room because everybody is getting one vote for that number.
Thanks, Rahul. Yes.
I'm Jiten Singh. I'll just see most of our population is busy for their own livelihood. They are motivated, or they are instigated rather, to do some kind of protest. And there's a leader and there's a cadre to bring in those number of people from A place, B place, or maybe 10 number places. So probably architects need to develop that kind of thing so that we look after the cities and see that they develop in proper direction. We are not doing it, actually. We are confined to our own places and not doing much of it. Yes, please.
Can I say something here? Actually, I run a foundation, and I have this enlistment of marshals. So, every locality, every road has a marshal. So, the marshal is the representative of people on that road. And he's a very unbiased, person who just passes on the information. So, you know how all these medical vaccine trials are also so skewed, because they do it only on a 25, a group of 25, group of 50. So how is it even commensurate with the number of people? So you have these marshals spread all over the city. That is why I said size is very important. So when you have a particular handleable size and you have n number of marshals, then you can take their opinion as the collective opinion of the people at large.
No. I'll put it in one line what she said.
Yeah.
There's a phenomenon all over the world among politicians, and some of them are called mass leaders, right? And they don't need to provide beer or biryani. If they call, 5 to 10 lakh people will come for a public meeting, just if one of these guys, and our current bosses are all like that. There is a certain quality about certain people. But what people forget is they're called mass leaders because they listen to the masses. So don't do it alone. If you have a problem, go with 50 people. Immediately the fellow will listen to you. So I've seen this happen again and again. If all of us are trying to do individual stuff, it won't work. You do mass leaders, listen to the masses. So take 50 people with you to start. And it's very easy to get 50 people. Call 10 people and say, please bring one friend. And that friend has to bring one friend. So it's Fibonacci number. In no time, you'll have 200 people.
It's much easier to narrate than practice it.
Thank you. We said 2 questions, right?
Any more?
The best, I guess, would be at this stage, we move over to the facilitations. And as I can see several hands, the panelists would be around over chai. And, we want to give them a big hand for showing us a fantastic places. Thank you.
Thank you, respected speakers, for this insightful, thought-provoking session. Please wait on the stage. For a small token of thanks, to present the token, I invite Architect Rajendra Mantri, sir, and Architect Mahesh Khatri, sir. Please step on the stage to honor the speakers, sir. We have Dr. Sanjeev Vidyarthi with us. Sir. Architect Sheila Shri Prakash. Ma'am. Oh, sorry. That was Architect Chen Yushin. Architect Naresh Narasimhan. Chen Yushin. Architect Chen Yushin. Please, come on stage. Architect Chen Yushin. Architect Rahul Kadri. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes. Another photo.